often actually begin by talking about the first meeting of the faculty of the University of Lethbridge that took place in Waterton National Park, when Owen Holmes brought a group of people together and talked about what the university should be as it emerged as Alberta's third research university, or third university at that time. And one of the things that was talked about a lot at that meeting was the importance of connecting very strong undergraduate teaching with liberal education and with strong scholarship. And I think when I look back over the last 50 years, that first meeting was a great harbinger for where the University of Lethbridge has come. It began as a very small university dedicated to the undergraduate experience and very, very strong teaching. It's remained committed to that for the last 50 years.
Liberal education was here when I came. I think it was a more pronounced flavor in the early years, and in the 80s and 90s it kind of dwindled quite a bit down to simply breadth. I got involved in liberal education in the early 90s. After I got tenure and my first sabbatical, and 3 years ago now, the provost set up this liberal education revitalization team, and I've been chairing that and trying to bring back more awareness of liberal education on campus. We found in our first few months we did a whole lot of focus groups, and students didn't know what it was, and half or more of our faculty didn't even know what it was, and so we've been talking to people about it a lot, and I think that's really exciting.
The university is developing in new directions. Graduate studies has an importance for both the research and the teaching function that it certainly didn't have 25 years ago. And we're probably going to be thinking about some structural changes in the university in coming years with new faculties moving in new directions. Who knows what kind of new schools or new faculties will come in. So that will lead the university in new directions.
I think over the next few years the University of Lethbridge is going to expand. It's going to get bigger. And we may end up with, who knows, a faculty of engineering here or something like that. I've actually been talking to people who are working on that. It's a really good idea. But I think it would be very important for the University of Lethbridge to not lose sight of that liberal education concept, their heritage or the core idea as we get bigger. And then we've got to preserve the core concepts of liberal education. So even in the technical subjects, so that's why we require our chemists to take some philosophy and sociology courses, some literature courses. I think that's very, very important. Sometimes the students don't see why it's important at the time.
We have embarked on a promotion campaign to articulate to everyone, our students, our staff, our community, our funders and taxpayers, what it is and what the value of it is, right? And as I said earlier, it's not that we haven't been doing this, but we don't sell it well. We don't promote it.
From a University of Lethbridge perspective, we've evolved really positively in our first 50 years. We, I think, have really grown as an institution, both more, locally, provincially, nationally. I think as we evolve, the opportunity is to remain vital to Lethbridge and Southern Alberta and really sort of build on our place in Southern Alberta in a way that can help us evolve as a university.
The university has strength in the region, and it has strength in undergraduate teaching, and we must never lose sight of that primary mandate that I think the people expect the university to be fulfilling.
The landscape in 20 or 30 years globally is going to be so different. And so if universities are not prepared to operate in that global landscape, I think they have there is the risk for them to become less and less vital. And I think my role and the role of all of us on campus is to be willing, prepared, and enthusiastic to engage in that kind of broadening of the University of Lethbridge. Yet, as I said, and I said this purposely, yet at the same time remaining vital to Lethbridge and the region.
Southern Alberta, big global world out there, and then you begin to peel away some of the pieces from it and recognize you've got 180 countries represented on campus. And you think, well, how is that possible? How can that be? I think what it is a statement that good education, the standards of good education are universal. People will come to where the quality of an education is high, or where the skills they're after are represented to a high level in research, for example. Students are attracted to that. I think the very fact that we do have an increasingly diverse community really helps to prepare us for that. I think it will be an ongoing challenge for us all to come to terms with of what a truly global experience is for tomorrow's student.
I think, and again, I'm happy to think about this, I think we're going to value diversity more. I think whether, again, that's gender diversity, whether that's, sexual orientation, whether that's, again, ethnic, religious diversity, cultural diversity, things like that. I'm very happy to see us right now confronting issues of the past, especially as it relates to First Nations people. I'm happy to say in my mind that teaching is going to emphasize more of a liberal education foundation. I think that's going to be true, Arian, because I think people need that for their lives. I think we're going to be less concerned about preparing people for certain technical type of careers and preparing them more for being able to adapt to changes that are going to help out there.
Education is our future. It certainly has been important in my life and my children's lives, but we need more, not less. Yes, we have competition in Calgary with two big universities there, in Edmonton, two more, and around proliferation of post-secondary institutions. I think colleges need to be strengthened, the two-year colleges. Everything needs to be strengthened. But I see further growth on our horizon.
And some of the things we're looking at now within the university, we're looking at transdisciplinary environments as a way to look at things differently. With the new science academic building that we're putting together, there's been a major push to ensure that we have a transdisciplinary approach.
How do we develop far more integrated transdisciplinary experiences for our students? How do we have faculty that are in very different disciplines engaging with our students together, as opposed to in two different classrooms at two different times in the schedule? And when we look at some of the advances in society, whether it's in the social sciences or the humanities or the natural sciences, so much of what is happening is based on the coming together of disciplines. And so as we think about how to educate young people, we need to be thinking about how we educate them within that context, so that as they grow and mature as young people, they are thinking along those lines as opposed to thinking in the boxes that we've been trained in. And it's one thing to design a building architecturally that will, in theory, foster transdisciplinary experiences for students. The next question is how do the various curriculum engage with that architecture? And to me, that's where the opportunity comes.
When people talk transdisciplinary nature of work, they tend to focus on the research. The reality is that that's likely to produce massive dividend in the teaching program as well. And that's one of the great excitements about where we're going with the science academic building. Even though we have these very traditional constructs of degrees within the sciences, the question is, how can we bring that together in a different way to produce a science education that will still meet the goals of a chemistry major, a physics major, but bring people together in a different way to do it? And that's one of the challenges I've put out to my colleagues in the sciences is, what are you doing with your curriculum? because surely we don't want to be in a position when we hopefully move into the building in 2019 where we're taking everything that we've got today with the construct that we've had in University Hall and dropping it into a brand new facility that's set up to do transdisciplinary work. Surely the education that we're providing should reflect that environment as well.
I think we're also going to see more flexibility in terms of physical space, in terms of teaching and learning, so that we're starting to see that now with flipped classrooms, classrooms that can adapt so that, again, if we're doing something today where it is more of a lecture type of thing and information dissemination, while we can have maybe the traditional type of structure where you're sitting there and taking notes and that, but then again, maybe tomorrow we're going to deal with group ideas, so then we can take the furniture that we have in the classroom and make it more adaptable so you can sit around in circles and talk. I think more and more we're going to be less about giving information and more about how do we facilitate learning. Taking on more of a coach and facilitator role in the classroom than necessarily just, again, that person who has that knowledge and disseminating it. I think this is exciting. Like if I was starting off my career today, rather than maybe being more towards the end of it, even though it's not quite yet to the end of it, I would be enthused about it. I would think, look at the opportunities that are going to come. And you know, being part of that dynamic type of environment with young people is there. And that's the great thing about our job, I think, is that unless you want things to be static, there's no way that they're static. They're always dynamic. You'll always have the change in the classroom, the students. Lots of things are happening.
I would love to have a solid idea of where things are going, but I do have a sense it's very dynamic, and I think that's good. No matter where it's going to go, I think it's on a good evolutionary path. I do feel that some very positive steps forward have been made from the old days of the sage at the front, which I certainly went through in my education. I think we're beginning to break down some of those constructs. There's a place for it, don't get me wrong, but not everything. And I think the very fact that we're questioning some of those constructs now is an important step forward. Hopefully more to come.
Is the evolution of, sort of teaching approaches, teaching strategies. I mean, when I started myself as a professor, the lecture style was pretty much the tradition that was followed. And if you broke out your classroom into small groups, that was seen as tremendously innovative, right? And so I think the teaching strategies, teaching practices will continue to evolve. And when I look at things like co-op, applied studies, these are very important directions, I think, for universities. And I would imagine, and I hope this will be the case, that those kinds of experiences become more and more integrated into how we engage with our students. And so as I look into the future, given our understanding of how experiential education is important for our students, I would imagine and hope that those kind of experiences become far more integrated into the overall curriculum and how we engage with our students.
I'd like to have even more interactive classes than I have. My classes are very interactive, and so. But I'd like to be able to develop my teaching, one, so that I'm really comfortable. I don't see myself as a natural-born teacher. I work at teaching, and so I like that I have to work at it because it makes me pay attention. And so, but I'd like to be able to bring even more of my own research into it. I'd like to invite students into the conversation. And that does happen, but I'd still like to have more of that.
Well, it's just so hard to think what the changes will be. I'm hoping the classes won't be any bigger, or if anything smaller. The smaller the class, the better. I think 50 is a nice. Any more than that, it's hard. It's hard on the professor, but it's hard on the students too.
The larger class size. I think U of L kind of has resisted that. I think the administration has realized that it might not follow the trend that the larger universities are, and we may not grow as fast as we want to. But let's grow with quality. rather than just jump for the quantity and to be able to say that we're now a larger university. I think you're better off to be able to say, yeah, we're a small university. We like it because we give a quality education to students that they don't get anywhere else, or very few other places. So we like to keep that. That's a big benefit to the U of L, and I think that I hope that we won't lose that kind of attitude. I don't think we will. I think most of the people here are pretty much behind, student interactions, getting them involved in what they're doing, and I think that everybody benefits. And I think the U of L has got a real good future if they maintain that attitude.
One of the exciting trends that I see is the increasing role of the student within the learning environment themselves, and the role in which the students play in directing the learning. I think that's really exciting, and with the availability of information now, as I said, I think there's some interesting experiments lately that we'll see moving forward about the way in which university teaching is done. I think it ties back to what we want to see from our students in terms of communication and confidence and talking about ideas. And some of these elements are of course already there, but I think bringing students back to the center and getting them to direct some of the learning is going to be an important trend.
I think education is going to be more customized. I think what you're going to find is that individuals will be more concerned about content orientation or competency orientation than necessarily just going through all kind of 12 chapters of a textbook.
Those who teach should also be the ones who are doing the research and creative activity. So teaching, research, they inform each other. And often stuff that I've been teaching has fed back into my research too. But there's this creative synergy, this feedback between the two. And so the level of how it's divided up in terms of the evaluating faculty members' performances, I think they should be roughly 50-50 on average.
I've always been a bit ambivalent about this connection between teaching and research. It used to really annoy me when people, especially in the sciences, would say, well, you can't be a good teacher if you're not also a really good researcher, and the best teachers are the ones who bring research into the classroom, and that somehow if you're not doing that, you're not good. Well, my research, successful as it was in a very esoteric, abstract area of abstract algebra, of abstract math. And yet, I would claim I was a reasonably good teacher. On the other hand, I did find after one of my first sabbaticals, research leaves, I came back and I did find, I'm teaching a little differently. Partly because I've been learning for a year, but also because I'd been out doing new things and deepening my own post-PhD knowledge, I guess. And so, in some ways, I think being an active researcher has carried over a bit into the classroom, not in content, but in process, perhaps.
Look in terms of even the research that's done at the U of L and the idea behind how that informs teaching and how we're on the cutting edge of discovery. We are a comprehensive institution, right? And that's another thing that I think we're going to find is we're going to find greater emphasis in the next 50 years here at the U of L especially about graduate education. And how do we actually still retain kind of that foundation of undergraduate education while we expand kind of graduate education? And so the idea is to try and hopefully see the enhancement on both sides and the integration of that. And that's another thing I think as well is that we're going to get away from functional disciplines and the barriers to that. I think with today's issues, it's important to interact with colleagues across disciplines. I think it'll be important for students to actually integrate across different types of subject matter as well. Interact with students from different disciplines. That's what is fascinating to me sometimes today in the classroom, is that the diversity of students in terms of, some being in arts and science, some being in fine arts, some being in management, and seeing how there's value in students' understanding about maybe I need to interact with people who have a different perspective and take different things there. And it's, again, not about right or wrong. It's about taking kind of those different perspectives integrating them, and then really you get an enhanced perspective. And that's what I think kind of the next 50 years about teaching is about, that customization, that individualization of knowledge, the idea of about more competency necessarily than just about memorizing facts, and this idea of integrating across knowledge. And that would be an exciting future to be part of. And I definitely will be part of it in the first little part of it. And again, and who knows, maybe, you know, in 30, 40 years, I'll still be talking about it, and I hope so. That'd be great.
Once you actually explain what liberal education is about, people are very enthusiastic and very willing to say, oh yeah, I do that. And oh yeah, I could put on my course outline that that's what I do, because that is what I do, I just haven't framed it that way. Right? So yeah, that's exciting, and I see us developing a good momentum here, and I think it's a niche for us in a kind of marketing sense, but more importantly in a societal sense, yeah.
In the last 10 years plus, we've seen an increasing question mark placed against academic programs within the province. The introduction of the Campus Alberta Quality Council, for example, as, if you like, a body that oversees for the province the development and implementation of new programs, was an important step forward. It came at a time at which academic programming within the province was exploding, and the aspirations of a lot of institutions were to have more and more credentials being offered. I think the province correctly stood back and asked questions about the importance of some programs, the relevancy of programs, and also whether the system as a whole needed them in the credential mix that it offered. Once that program was introduced, Campus Alberta Quality Council, it then brought into question the whole thing of academic quality assurance. What are institutions doing to ensure that the quality of their academic programs, including delivery, is in place? And that's where we, as an institution, began to put a lot of effort. A number of years ago, we developed a very rigorous internal process for looking at the way our programs, our credentials are delivered. And I think that role by government was a good stimuli. It caused us to look at ourselves and ask, why haven't we had more reviews of our academic programming? Why are we just content to let things move on through what, in actual fact, become non-linked changes through curriculum coordinating committee as the years go on, and non-linked calendar changes? Is there a game plan for a certain credential? Is it on track? Is it meeting its objectives? I think we've become pretty good at that now. But it's something that we've had to put a lot of work in institutionally to come on.
I think we play a very unique role in Campus Alberta. In fact, I think we're an N of 1, which I'm very proud of. And we're an N of 1 because we are an institution that has this 50-year commitment to the experiences of undergraduate students in the classroom and outside of the classroom. We're an N of 1 because we have maintained a commitment to liberal education for 50 years within that context. We're also an N of 1 because at the same time we've grown as a university committed to strong scholarship and engagement in research, but within that very unique context of being a university still dedicated to liberal education and the undergraduate experience. And so when I think about that compared to the other research universities, I think we're very different. When I think about ourselves in relation to, say, the other undergraduate universities, what we bring in terms of scholarship and engagement with our students in things outside of sort of the traditional undergraduate university experience, I think that's very unique. And the liberal education piece, I think, as a part of that is very unique. And then the other piece for us is, I think, we are the only university in this province that is really dedicated to ensuring that students want to go away to school, can go away to school, and so that's become a bit of a sweet spot for us. Now, going forward, our challenge is to maintain that sense of uniqueness, and I think that that's an important aspiration, right? I think it's really important for us not to just fall into the trap of thinking about ourselves as the third research university that will kind of just fall in line with how the other two research universities in the province have evolved. I think it's really important for us to stay on the course of being this unique institution. And you know, in my conversations with community members, with alumni, with members of government, I do think that they see that in us. And so I do think there is space for us to maintain the uniqueness of the University of Lethbridge.